Hey my nerds, welcome back. Sorry for missing last week. I had this weird allergic reaction thing that just completely knocked me out for about a week there, but I'm back. And we're here to talk about character motivation. Characters are tricky, especially when it comes to the task of figuring out what their motivation is and conveying it to your audience. It can be easy to go too heavy and repetitively tell the audience what the character's motivation is, and it can be just as easy to be too lax about showing what your character's motivation is and leave the audience guessing and unclear about why the character's doing anything that they're doing. Neither of these is great, so how do you avoid doing either and stay in the Goldilocks zone of character motivation? The easiest way is to pick one driving motivator for your character and let that influence every choice the character makes. This helps you stay in the good Goldilocks zone because firstly, there's consistency in the choices your character is making because all of their choices are driven by that same motivation. Secondly, it's good because there's no need to keep telling your audience why a character is acting as they are because you're already showing it through the choices that the character is making. This means that all those paragraphs where you're telling the audience why the character is doing it are redundant and can be cut out. Now, I know, how does character complexity fit into all of this? We're always told as writers that the audience is bored of simple. They're looking for complexity in their characters these days. When I first started out, I thought this meant that complex characters had to have lots of different motivations, sometimes conflicting. Characters are only ever a facet of what we are. They're limited by the time you have to convey them to your audience. What this means is that complexity of character doesn't come from showing every motivation the character has. That way just leads to a very messy story that most audiences won't enjoy. Instead, complexity of characters comes in the form of a complex motivation. That's right, a motivation. One motivation to rule them all that you can use as a North Star to guide your entire story. So how do you make that motivation complex? There are many different ways of achieving this. An easy one is to create a motivation that creates interesting results. For example, one that's strong enough to overpower other motivations that we can assume the character has, but you don't have to spend time laboring over to convince us of, like self-preservation. Most characters have that. Not all, but most. An example of this, think a mother protecting her child and literally doing everything to keep her child alive. The motivation is love for her child. It's simple, but the end result, well, that entirely depends on how far you as an author are willing to push her, the situations that you put her into that create complicated outcomes. The other way you can create a complicated character is to make the underlying motivation complex. Now we have a mother who's trying to protect her only surviving child because she lost all of her other children and her partner in some horrific backstory disaster that has left her unable to even stand being in another room to her remaining child. Her motivation is still the same, to keep her child safe, but the form it will take will have very different, interesting nuances than the first example. If you really want to go for gold, then you need to combine the two. Create a character who has a complex underlying motivation and who is put into positions that result in complicated outcomes. Winner, winner. All right, my nerds. Now, assuming that your motivation is to go away and write a good book, be off with you and have a good week. Happy writing. See you next time.